Hello, and thank you for coming in here to deal with me. So it's going to be full of jokes, storytelling, and apparently observability and feature flagging. So as he mentioned, I'm Alayshia, and so I'm going on a very long journey, which is why I'm not at Honeycomb. But I have spent a lot of time talking about observability, getting people there, and working on with high-performing teams to get there. And so I love talking about observability, as corny as that is, and I also love talking about feature flagging. And so we're going to go on a journey on why you should be doing this thing. And so, understanding feature flag. So if you don't know what it is, it's basically a way to enable, disable your code without having to do code source. So there's a few benefits with that. So if you're a developer, people tell you deploy, 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 and then there's all of these guardrails behind that deployment, which makes sending out a release, it makes it suck really bad. Most times you want to have an experiment and you want to get it done really quickly. Most times you want to test that new feature because you have an initiative from marketing, or you have a competitor who's doing a thing, or you have a use case where the biggest customer came in a room and said, stop what you're doing, we're going to give you oodles of money, and we need you to do this thing. And so what that feature flag does for you, it allows you to test select groups, and you can decide how you want to do feedback and data-driven decisions. So at Honeycomb, we spend a lot of time doing more of a PLG, product-led motion, where we use the product to determine what we're going to do, and then we use observability to do that analysis. And so one of the things that we did, as simple as it was service maps, and we decided to do that on the basis of customers were telling us that they needed this, and we needed to figure out what would make us differentiate from that. And we had to figure out, well, who's going to use this? Because for some people, after you use observability tool, a service map sucks. It's just like, okay, that topology is there, but I already know how to query. And so we had to figure those things out. And so all about experimenting, having that feedback, talking to people in the field, talking to customers about what they need. And then you get to mitigate risk. So since you're just doing your job, you're fixing codes, you're putting in hot fixes, you're coming up with new features, you're doing all that, and you just keep doing that. And when it's time, you allow a subset of users to enter the realm of the thing. And so now you're not just throwing it out into the world and saying, boom, it blew up. Now we have to have a whole discussion about why this thing blew up. We can then decide, okay, this thing made sense for us, or this thing did not. No matter how many times you mimic your production environment, it's not production. And so a lot of times you end up with these scenarios where it seems like it's one thing and it's really another. And you don't get that until you get that, if you get that. So the next part of this would be progressive deployment. So you want to be able to, as the talk before me, you want to be able to gradually throw things out there into the world. Another thing is that you want your engineers to be smarter, and you want them to learn. We all aspire to have the blameless game, where we're throwing things out there and they blow up and we learn something. And how do we learn something? From gradually having these experiments and being smarter. If any of you are in a startup, you already know it's a small team and you have to do everything. And so one of the shortcuts to that is that you are mitigating your risks and you are doing progressive deployments in that way. So that's really feature flagging, doing your damn job and putting things behind in place when it's time to deliver a thing, getting that feedback and deciding from that feedback what you want to do next. So if you want to roll it out to production, you want to throw it in the trash, whatever you want to do with that. And so then from there is observability. So observability, there's so many definitions. I tried to come up with the most simplest thing, which is basically providing insights into complex system behaviors to understand how your system works. So real-time performance, testing and prod. we all test in prod, whether we like it or not. Some of us won't talk about it, but we have to do that to figure out what's going on with our real-life customers. And from that, testing in prod, traditionally, most people think we start off with a dashboard. Something goes on, you go to that dashboard. That dashboard is going to tell you systematically things that we have a hunch about. So our infrastructure and things like that. What it won't tell you is that those 3 customers that have just sent something to your support queue is having an issue. It won't tell you that. I'm telling you, it won't tell you that. And because of that, between that and that thing that happens every once in a while, every other month, that you're trying to piecemeal what's going on with your systems, those unknowns are things that happen, and they're going to continue to happen because of complex systems. You're going to have multiple services. You're going to have multiple teams. You're going to probably formulate, hey, we're going to use this stack. But then after that, anything else is fair game because applications do different things. And so one of the things that observability provides for you is underlining unknowns. There's also a cultural aspect to this. So if I'm traditionally, I have an infrastructure background, so I'll just say I'm an SRE or I'm on the platform team or whatever the case is, and there's 2 developing teams. The reality is I don't know what their code's doing, and the other reality is I've deployed a thing that I don't know what it's doing. And also, someone's code or whatever someone put in is impacting another service. How do we know that? We all get on this call and we're all talking smack to each other about this happened and that happened. With observability, you have that single pane of glass. And so if you're looking at something like, for example, tracing, you can see the whole unit of work. So you can see from when the user hit this initial endpoint all the way to all of the services it touched. So if it hit a back end, you can see that query-like language. If it hit some endpoints, you can see that. And you can also add that business context. So now, once you're seeing that this thing is happening and you all agree that the services are doing this thing, now you can say, okay, I'm the payment service, so I probably want to know what kind of payment types are there. We always want to know what the user ID is. So if this is impacting this user, we can understand. And there's now, for observability, there's feature flag semantics. They're in beta. But you can do something like saying, hey, my feature flag key is this. And so now you're basically saying, once you look at this code and you're seeing something's happening or you're reasoning about the data that you're mining through, you can say, hey, for this feature, these things are happening. And not only can you do that for yourself, but you can translate that to a product manager. You can translate that to your VP. You can translate that to people who, quite frankly, don't know what's going on. They just know that this thing needs to be done, and they need to understand the real-time results behind it. And so there's a lot of benefits in between having feature flagging and observability. As we talked about before, feature flagging allows you to roll out new features to a subset group, depending on what you decide to do. And then you can combine that with observability to let you monitor these features to perform this in real time. And so observability tools can help you track user interactions, infrastructure impacts, error rates, performance, whatever you're looking for. And so traditionally, we like to think of looking at the logs. Observability encompasses the pillars, and it's your flavor of the week, I guess. And so you can have robust logs. You can also put some of that information you're tracing. You can also correlate those things back. And so you know what's going on. And so with the feature flags, you have that A and B experimentation. So you're able to expose just different feature variations to user groups. And then those observability tools can collect that behavior. And then from that behavior, you can measure the impact of those variations on that user engagement. And then from that, you can convert that to other performance indicators. And so traditionally at Honeycomb, we eat our own dog food, so use Honeycomb to monitor Honeycomb kind of thing. But also in that, we have SLOs. And those SLOs, we look at those indicators to see how well the customer's doing. And with that, what we're measuring is actually in those traces. And so if I'm looking at latency, I'm basically looking at duration milliseconds, for example, to figure out what's happening real time, and that's used to calculate that. And in general, you can use SLOs to measure real time. This is what we've decided is best for our users. This is best for our internal team, and let's measure that thing. And that's what your A/B testing and experimentation will get you. And then from there, you have error monitoring and recovery. And with that, observability can be used to identify your performance bottlenecks. And so in situations where you're having issues with Kafka, or you're having issues with Kubernetes, or whatever the case may be, and that's impacting a user for whatever reason, you're able to see those things, which gives you a sense of, okay, I know what's happening, and we can recover faster because we're not making too many hunches and assumptions about that thing. And from there, you can have performance optimization. Since you can see exactly what's going on and how long trip time takes and all these wonderful things, now you can fine tune. I've been in personal situations where I've worked with someone who brought in a contractor, and they brought in a contractor to do their, I don't know, a feature that they had or something. And basically what they did was bad code. And they didn't know that this was bad code until they realized, oh, this is a really bad loop. And the trace was able to see that. And so that performance bottleneck improved. If you accompany that with your monitoring systems, now you're able to say, okay, this is what success looks like for us. This is what we're trying to measure. Are we there yet? We're not there yet. What's happening here? We expect this service to be doing this, but it's not. You can reason about those things a little bit better as well. And then rollbacks. Since it's feature flagging, the good thing about a rollback is it's quite easy. Turn the thing off. Turn the thing off, turn the thing on, turn the thing off, turn the thing on. And so now you're not worried about and twiddling your thumbs, and everybody talks about the infamous Friday deploys. You're not worried about those things. You're more so worried about getting to the point. And so with all that jazz being said, I want to share a story. It's a very corny story, but it's a story. And I want to introduce you to the supercharged team. And so the best way to capture how these things work and why they work, I thought about, hey, maybe I can do a demo. Yeah, I can do a demo, but that's also boring to me. So what I wanted to do was share this story. So this is my team. They're called the Supercharged team. And basically their mission is to deliver products really fast. They have to make sense. They have to appeal to customers. And they have to be reliable. And my team works so well with what they do that they're called the Supercharged team because the money comes in and we supercharge people for our products. And so the team consists of the following players from, I guess, the left to the right. So we have the product manager. So she knows what she wants. She says, like, that backlog, she smacks that backlog, and she's like, hey, we're going to set up for success by having the features, and we're going to transform our features into money. We have a sales guy. So the sales guy, he's always positive. He's always sharply dressed. He's always spending the company's money, and he's always bringing in the big bucks. He does whatever it takes to get us where we're going, and he gets the deal done by telling you whatever you need is in his suitcase, although there's nothing in there. And then from there, there's a support engineer. So support handles simple to complex questions. And then the support engineer provides exactly the same level of service, which is a high level of service. And so after a while, certain things, like if a customer comes to you and asks the same question 1,000,000 times, becomes robotic. And then we have a CSM. So he participates in AR marathons, and he really hates early morning meetings. He pulls the strings to ensure that things get done. And he wants to be able to complement the users. And so the CSM really acts as that driving force. And so then we have the SRE, and they're out there destroying incident fires. And they're doing that by blasting through issues like latency and things like that with their keyboard. And so the company has tasked him with delivering a service. So the first thing is the power of synergy. So what I want to talk about is that as corny as these roles are, it's important when you are doing feature flagging and you are doing observability to really understand their impact. And I'm going to share the story. And as I share the story, I'm going to, like I said, share the impact. So this product manager oversees the exclusive preview feature, which rolls out a subset of users. So, of course, they're responsible for a positive experience. So with observability, though, things like, hey, what is the feature, the user, how long, how many people are actually buying into this? Those things the PM can use to determine what's next. At Honeycomb, a lot of times, we would compete for the infamous backlog, where do we do a feature? Do we handle things on a backlog? Where's the median there? Where's the balance? And most of the time, the PM was on board with what we were saying because they were able to look at that same data to identify, okay, this feature really sucks. Nobody's using it. Or, okay, there's bugs in this feature, and it's really causing a decrease in usage or a decrease in latency. And the things that we're measuring as a team, those things are being impacted. So what do we do next? And so the PM is going to be that person that works on the feature refinements to understand, to fine tune. They're not going to be the person that does it, but they're going to be the person that you work with to understand these are the things that we need. And so with feature flagging, they're able to have their own destiny. So you're pushing out these features, they're able to push in people and push out people. So like, for example, we had, with service maps, we had 3 customers that were our sort of like our biggest enterprise customers that wanted to use it. And then we had a really small customer who had a niche, I guess they had how would I say this? They had a niche use case that was intriguing enough that we could use that use case to draw in more users from that. And our product manager was able to, once they were introduced by the CS person, able to understand those trends, to understand, hey, we can do something more impactful to the product roadmap. And so with feature flagging, you're able to make better data-driven decisions because you're able to walk in and walk out. And then you have customer adoption. So, of course, CSMs identify who meets the criteria for this exclusive preview feature. The reality is they own the satisfaction ownership of the customer. So you have a CSM, they are the people that get on these calls that you don't want to get on. They are the people that say, okay, I get it, I understand. I will talk to you next week, and say the same thing until you get them exactly what they need. But what happens when they have feature flags and observability accompanying that, they can also use that to leverage certain things and certain insights. They can get in front of the customer to say, hey, I see that you were really excited about this, but you're not using it. Or, hey, I think you can benefit from this because I'm seeing these types of trends. As someone that spends money, and I'm pretty sure all of you in the room spend money, you like it when someone knows what you need. And so by having feature flags and observability, you can be proactive about what you need. And so then from there, there's a consistent feedback loop. I've been in tech long enough to know that feedback loops from product, marketing, sales, CS, anyone in the field, all of that stuff is important because what ends up happening is we build a feature, and if you're not talking to the crowd, I mean, why the hell are you building the feature? If you're not understanding that the field says, we did this thing, but nobody wants this thing, or everyone else is doing this, and I keep hearing in deals that they want that. A CSM is able to give that feedback. And you're able to say, okay, well, I got this feedback. We can create a prototype here, turn on that flag, and we can monitor that. and understand that and share those insights with everyone. Because at the end of the day, no matter who you are, I know you're intrigued about the other person's job. You're intrigued about, okay, how do we get these customers? Okay, the person that's not technical, how did you get this working? We're all intrigued and we can all do the same thing. And then from there is SRE for the rescue. So essentially with observability and feature flagging and SRE, they're gonna monitor performance. They wanna understand reliability. And observability is one of the fundamental concepts for that. Most of the time, well, not most of the time, shouldn't be most of the time, all the time, they want to make sure there's no disruptions. They want to be proactive and understanding what a user needs. And they become this observability shield in a sense. And so someone rolled out a new feature. Or I would say, I've been in a situation where as a SaaS company, we've onboarded our biggest customer. And right, so if you're a SaaS company, you're gonna always onboard your biggest customer. And when you onboard your biggest customer, there's a lot of unknowns about how it's gonna impact your system, about how using X, Y, and Z is going to now get a customer to say, okay, I will pay you more money if you add this to the feature. And all of these other things that are around it. And so most times with an SRE, they're gonna do the typical SRE things, of course, but also they can use feature flagging to basically talk to developers and engineers and whatever other working groups there are out there to say, hey, well, we're doing this stuff and we are having issues. We may need to roll this back, or we may need to do a little bit of rework, or we may need to add some resources to the platform, et cetera, et cetera. They're able to do that. And because of that, they're able to have a broader rollout protection. Just imagine you keep doing this thing where you keep spinning out new features, and that is great. But somebody needs to be checking out for how is this impacting us, so we can continuously do this, so we can grow gracefully, as opposed to sweeping things under the rug or barely making it, or whatever people do when it's a mess. And so from that, then you have this support person. So I like talking about support people because they don't get enough flowers for what they do in terms of sometimes they're highly technical, sometimes they're just dealing with stuff that people don't want to deal with. They're normally the first line of defense in things like, hey, I just got a marketing demo of some kind, and I don't like the sales guy. Can you sell this to me? Hey, I followed your guide and I'm stuck. Hey, I want to pay you more money. Do I talk to you? All of those things, they help make the customer happier. And so at Honeycomb, everybody, well, I wouldn't say everybody, but the majority of people have to use observability to understand what's going on. And for the support people, I have to be technical enough to maneuver around these services to then make an ethical decision to, if it's something with the product, is this a fire? Is this something someone needs to get their eyes on? Is this something that I can work on? Those types of things, they have to figure out what the issue resolution is. Because as an engineer, hey, I'm working on a product, but I may or may not have to talk to this person. So I'm gonna do what I gotta do. But they are the people that have to have this issue resolution. And so most times what we've seen with, like, for example, the service maps example, is that they were able to figure out for these certain tiers, these are the tiers that we're going to give this type of information to. And these are the tiers that we're gonna get this type of information to. And product, I keep seeing the same ticket with the same information. Let's do something about it. Or I don't have any visibility. Let's go in and rework our code to add more visibility to that. And so now you have guidance on all sorts of things, not just the product, but should we fix docs? Should we have another thing in place? Should we fire everybody? That's not an option. But now you have guidance. And then from there, you have sales influence on business growth. So sales is interesting in using feature flags because sales, it goes a few different ways. They're great at sales. Sometimes they're super duper technical in an interesting way. Sometimes they're not. And so for sales, it's all about driving business growth. You created a feature, she created a feature, they created a feature, we created 5 features. If we created 5 features, somebody needs to be using it. It should be driving business value. It should be critical to the mission that we have. And they can use that to say, hey, we created this new feature, and I can go in the back end and figure out how well that feature is doing, or I can figure out what customers are using it, and then go talk to those customers, and then now I have a use case that I didn't know I had, and I can drive business that way. It's all about showcasing that value for them. And so most times people don't think about it from that perspective just because sales gonna sell, right? But in certain segments, it's important for them to, because they're in the field too. They're in the field understanding what's happening. All right, so in summary, feature flagging plus observability is love. So you have observability. It's all about having those insights, things of unknowns in production. And then you have feature flagging, toggling on and off, doing your job. And when your marketing person or your PM wants something deployed at 9 a.m., you don't have to sit there and wait and start up some stuff and have some coffee. They can just do it because now it's behind a flag. And so now we're all cooperating. And so team collaboration is key. There's so many people involved that are not technical that you can put that business context into. So maybe there's information that your PM needs. Maybe there's information that your VP needs. All of these people may need something. And so you can add that business context. And if you're using open source, open telemetry, then that's just as simple as setting an attribute. And then from that, if you're using Jaeger or whatever you're using, you can use that to figure out what's happening. And so having that business text lessens the stress. I mentioned payments earlier. I'm a payments team. Now I understand that, okay, for some odd reason, when customers use MasterCard, this thing happens. But when they use, I don't know, Visa, this thing happens. You're able to understand those things and give that back to people. And now all this techie stuff is readable for not just you, but for several other folks. And so you can all make conscious decisions. And then everything is an experiment. So literally everything is an experiment. Features don't last forever. Companies don't last forever. Things don't last forever. And so the idea is that you keep churning, you keep understanding, you keep discovering, you keep getting smarter, and you keep experimenting and having fun. And then Leroy, you deploy, let PMs or marketing release. And so I like to say that because we build and we deploy and we do all of these things. And really, releasing is just a switch. It's just saying a thing is out there, everybody's cheering in the background, the thing has happened, we hope that somebody uses it, it brings us profitability, and most times all of that translates to marketing, our PMs, understanding those things. And so that's my spiel. And so thank you.